I'm Larry Bishop, and you're listening to the World is Wrong podcast.
We're here to tell you how the world is wrong. The world is wrong about...
Wolf. I'm the Wolf Man. Wolf Man Jack.
Welcome to The World is Wrong, an extremely positive podcast where we celebrate films and film artists the world is wrong about. I am one of your hosts, and my name is Andras Jones.
And my name is Brian Connolly, and I'm also a co-host with the most.
Is that Jack Nicholson, or is that Wolfman Jack?
That's my Jack Nicholson as a Wolfman.
Yeah, we are entering the spooky month of Wrongtober, where we look at films that are horror films that are not horror films, or films that are not horror films that are horror films. If you're feeling confused and scared, that's because it's Wrongtober. And
I love it.
We are digging into Wolf from 1994, a oft-maligned film.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This is my choice, so you know I love it. Before we get into playing a clip and talking about it, you have any first impressions you want to share, Brian?
No, I was just really excited you picked this because I loved this movie. I rented it when it came out, watched it with my family, loved it back then, and it was one of those movies that I really liked, and I didn't know anyone else did. But no, and it was great, and I haven't seen it since I first saw it, so revisiting it as a grown-up, I liked it even more. In fact, I would say I loved it. I love this movie.
Oh, okay. Well, great. This is going to be a love fest for a not much loved film. So it's, how odd is it that we have these strange tastes? It's almost as if we were bitten by a videotape.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go to the clip, and then I'll tell you about this film.
There might be spoilers. There might be spoilers. There might be spoilers.
Will, I was just about to come see you, tell you I talked to Alden about the senior consultant position. It's yours if you want it. It's less pay, of course. So is Eastern Europe.
Well, thank you, Stuart, but I've had a better offer.
Really? It's wonderful. What house?
This one.
I don't understand.
It's fairly simple. I did the same thing you did. I nagged Alden until he gave me your job.
When? I don't understand when.
In my spare time, I've had a lot of it lately.
Well, I guess, I guess I owe you some congratulations. I guess the best man won. Shit, I'm glad in a way. I mean, I couldn't have given it up, and I didn't like the way I got it. I hope we can work together without rancor.
You're fired, Stuart.
Don't do it to me, Will. It'll ruin me.
I know. But it's best for the firm.
Give me a few months. Let me say I quit.
No. It wouldn't be best for the firm.
You vindictive son of a bitch. The best thing for the firm is me. I'm the best thing this firm has, and you fucking know it. This is fucking ribbon. Are you crazy?
No. I'm just marking my territory. And you got in the way.
Nice.
suede shoes. Asparagus.
To me, that scene of him peeing on James Spader is the most memorable scene in the movie. Like, I've thought about that scene every day for the last 30 whatever years since I saw this movie.
Okay. Hold on. So let me tell you about this film, Brian, and listeners. Mike Nichols and Jack Nicholson collaborated on 4 films together. Carnal Knowledge from 1971, based upon a screenplay by Jules Pfeiffer, actually did a lot more to establish Nicholson as a movie star than it usually gets credit for these days. 1975's The Fortune with Warren Beatty and Stockard Channing, and 1986's Heartburn with Meryl Streep are, like Carnal Knowledge, explorations of what we would now call toxic masculinity, very forwardly so. Wolf from 1994 embraces this toxicity in the form of a wolf bite in a horror film that doesn't seem to be that interested in scaring us. Nicholson uses his soft-spoken Rudyard Kipling voice to great effect as the weakening editor at a New York publishing house who gets bitten by a wolf, and yada, 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 it's a werewolf movie with some amazing scenes and some great actors in some really elegant lighting. The cast, you got Michelle Pfeiffer, Christopher Plummer, Kate Nelligan, David Hyde Pierce, Richard Jenkins, like early Allison Janney, very early David Schwimmer, and Peter Gerety in small roles. You've even got Prunella Scales from Fawlty Towers in this movie.
Yeah.
But the standout is James fucking Spader as Nicholson's weaselly protege. I mean, the movie kicks into a whole other gear once he starts displaying his own lupine tendencies. And in some ways, you could almost see the Spader character as a stand-in for Jack Nicholson's self-justifying sexual predator in Carnal Knowledge. They are both these very weaselly guys you can't take your eyes off of. But Spader's performance is just so much more fun than even than Nicholson's. Well, Nicholson's in Carnal Knowledge isn't even really fun. But Spader in this is. He has a scene with Michelle Pfeiffer that reaches this pinnacle of genuine absurdity that, to me, is worthy of the best of Mike Nichols and Elaine May. And Elaine May is credited... she's credited by some sources as an uncredited writer on the film. And we also have Ennio Morricone doing the score and Rick Baker doing the monster effects. So while Wolf may not be a very scary horror film or a funny comedy or even a satisfying drama, if you need a box to put it in, maybe it's best to think of Wolf as the completion of the exploration of territorial men that Nichols and Nicholson began in 1971. And of those 4, I think it's probably my favorite.
Wow.
Although The Fortune definitely has some high points. Having just rewatched it today, that is a crazy movie, and Stockard Channing is amazing in it.
I think that's a movie we may have to save for yet another episode, because that's one that, if I may interject for a second, that movie's never been released on DVD. Like, you have to watch it on VHS if you can't find it, by nefarious means on the internet. But I love that movie. It's basically, if for people who don't know what it is, it's as if Warren Beatty and Jack Nicholson were shoehorned into like a Laurel and Hardy movie, kind of. It's very weird.
It's a very mean Laurel and Hardy movie.
Yeah, a very mean, but it has this weird sense of slapstick. They're almost like a weird version of a comedy team. It's no wonder that it's one of the Coen brothers' favorite movies, because it feels sort of like Coen brothers in a way. If you can find The Fortune, seek it out, and then maybe in a year we'll do that. We'll do another Mike Nichols. Jack Nicholson, because that movie's crazy. Anyways, I had hit the end of my explanation of this film, such as it is,
and just sort of how I'd like to approach it.
So, how is the world wrong about Wolf?
Well, I think mostly, as I said, I think it's mostly that people are looking for it to be a film that it's not even trying to be. So, that's a lot of time what we come up against in this World is Wrong exploration of film is that if you're looking for one kind of film and it's not there, it's like the horrible Roger Ebert line about Mad Dog Time. It's like waiting for a bus in a city that doesn't have a bus line. Well, that's on you. That's not like get a bicycle in this town and you'll fucking love it. So the criticisms of this film is that it's a really bad horror film. Well, it's not a horror film. It's a character study of a guy becoming a wolf. So yeah. Okay. Given. Okay. And and I know it's sort of it's not your fault. It kind of advertised itself as that, but it's not.
Yeah. I think that I remember, and I still like talking to people about it at the video store. I think it was sort of the ads and the trailers. A lot of people didn't even give this a chance. They're just sort of like, why would I watch this dopey 90s movie where Jack Nicholson is the Wolfman? Like, what is this? And a lot of people kind of talk of it in Mike Nichols' filmography as being like, oh, this is him slumming it. This is him like totally crashing and burning and selling out, making some crap with this good actor that he had made other great movies with. And why are they making this doo-doo? And those people clearly haven't watched this movie, or they came in expecting doo-doo and just couldn't change their mind, couldn't get out of it. Because like when you watch this movie, it's a brilliant comedy. I think this movie is so funny intentionally, which makes sense. Okay. If Elaine May helped write it, then that makes sense.
Well, that's the thing. That's the other thing, is that so many reviews talk about how this film isn't funny enough to be a satire. And it's just like, no,
wrong.
The satire is going over your head. You are looking, it's like if you're looking for jokes, then, and that's your idea of comedy. It's sort of like I was thinking a lot about the difference between this and American Werewolf in London. Whereas, like I feel like American Werewolf in London is much more of a horror movie.
Definitely.
And it's much more of a joke comedy.
Yes.
This is not, like, that's not what Mike Nichols or Nichols and May ever did. It was always humor arising from the absurdity of situations, a lot of times where sex is the subtext, but you're not actually saying it. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like that Lubitsch thing too, but like an updated version of it. And that's the thing, is like this film has such a sense of humor radiating through the whole film that you could think that it's not funny, because at no point, and this is the Mike Nichols thing, there's no point at which he's like, but see, it's a joke. It's like, no, we're just gonna just keep going. The movie's just gonna keep happening, and it's absurd. And it's kind of true of all of his films. Like The Graduate has that, and Closer has that. That's another one of his films that I love. Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf has it all through it. That's a really funny movie with no jokes, and it's also really tragic and sad, but it never loses that sense of humor. And also enjoying playing with sexual symbolism without actually saying it. And this film just lends itself to all of that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I meant when I referred to Nicholson's Rudyard Kipling voice?
No, I'm curious because I don't know what he sounds like. What do you mean by that?
So it's not that he's sounding like Rudyard Kipling. I knew that would be an inside reference. It was at the around this time and earlier, Nicholson was recording, reading Rudyard Kipling stories for, I think it was for Windham Hill Records, or it was like there was a whole series, and I was too old to enjoy them as a kid, but I was, as an actor, I was really, really excited to listen to these great actors do these stories. And Nicholson did several of the Rudyard Kipling stories with Bobby McFerrin doing the music.
Oh, wow.
And if you look for them, they animated them, and they're beautiful. And Nicholson's after you hear that, it's sort of like the purest dose. You know, like you put maple syrup on your pancakes, but if you ever just take a swig from the jug of maple syrup, that's so like pure Nicholson.
In the high and far off times, the elephant, oh best beloved, had no trunk. He had only a blackish, bulgy nose as big as a boot that he could wriggle about from side to side, but he couldn't pick up things with it.
And throughout this movie, he never explodes. He never does the Nicholson explosion thing. Mm-hmm. It's all like when he gets powerful, he gets quieter. Mm-hmm. But Nicholson quiet is poetic, is lyrical, is seductive, but not that leering seductive thing that, again, it almost feels like James Spader, Mike Nicholson is almost saying, hey, do your version of Jack's overacting thing, because he's underacting in this. Yeah. Do the Jack Nicholson thing, and that's why James Spader is so much better than like a Christian Slater. Like when you tell him to do a Jack Nicholson, he doesn't do an impression. No offense to your impression earlier, but he does he knows how to turn it up to that other level of absurdity that Nicholson's doing in The Fortune, and I think also to some degree in Carnal Knowledge, not so much in Heartburn, but yeah. So the way the world is wrong about this movie is wanting it to be a horror film when it's not, and not getting how goddamn funny everything is in this movie, but also real. Like, it's not like there's a lot of ugly, intense stuff in this movie. There's James Spader at the end, spoiler alerts all throughout this, but James Spader's basically trying to rape Michelle Pfeiffer as a wolf, and those scenes are both horrific and also ludicrous. It's such a fine balance. And in this movie, maybe it doesn't work for most people, but I feel like it's the same fine balance that he gets in some of my favorite films of his, like I said, like The Graduate or Closer, to bookend his career. So, yeah. So that's how I think the world is wrong about this movie. Now, Brian, it's your turn. What do you think about this film?
I just love it. It's so sexual. Like, you have three, like you're all your lead actors. Like, just like the fact that you have scenes with Jack Nicholson, who is like James Spader and Christopher Plummer, like those guys just like sweat sex. Those guys are just, and it's something always kind of sleazy about these guys, and to put, like, not in real life, maybe in real life, but like as actors, like in the roles they play, they're always so good at playing sleaze bags, and just putting all of them together in this, and they're all kind of smirking, and they're all kind of doing their kind of gross dude thing. I love it. It's great. And then putting Michelle Pfeiffer kind of in there, and this is like post her doing Catwoman. Like, you have all these people just dripping with like sex and sexuality. And so I didn't pick up on that when I first saw it when I was a kid, but as an adult, I'm like, man, this is a steamy, sexy, sleazy movie. Like, I did not expect that.
Hey, don't sell Kate Nelligan short either. She has a kind of ice queen eroticism that is kind of surprising in this film.
Yeah.
But we can get to that. Yeah.
So that was exciting and great, because I totally forgot that Christopher Plummer was in this movie. And I was kind of expecting to be excited to see Jack Nicholson as a Wolfman. I did, but I was pleasantly surprised at how brilliant James Spader is. And like, there's so many good moments that he has in this movie. And I love that when they turn into werewolves, they just kind of look like 90s creeps. Like, they don't really look like dogs. They kind of just look like a greasy 90s scumbag. Just somebody that would be like, like at Lollapalooza or something. They're just like this sweaty, gross, like sideburns, like kind of that unshaven 90s look that everyone did. That's what they look like in this movie. Like, no one really looks like a wolf. Like, the makeup isn't American Werewolf and London Werewolf. It really is more just like exaggerated features It's actually more like the Universal Wolfman in a way. Who I noticed while watching this, Jack Nicholson, same body type as a Lon Chaney Jr. He has that kind of like the when he's running around like with it just his like jeans. It feels very Lon Chaney Jr. Yeah.
Yeah, how much do like? There's a lot of I thought that there were a lot of references in this, but they were subtle enough that I also just wondered if I was projecting them. Like, well, that would be an obvious one. Like, they would have talked about that. Like, that's something that that Nicholson probably intended. Like, he watched the Wolfman and was like, I want to run like that, because that's probably not how Nicholson runs in real life. There's a lot of mean but sometimes funny descriptions of that run if you do a search of the web, often involving him needing to get to the bathroom. So okay, well, we've never done Nicholson. We haven't done Nicholson on this show yet, have we? Is this our first?
Well, I
Nicholson?
didn't do it with you. You did Missouri Breaks.
Oh yes, I'm sorry,
but I was not in that episode. So this
yes,
this is my first Jack Nicholson.
Your first time to talk about Jack.
Yeah.
So what's your take? What's your experience of Jack Nicholson?
I mean, it's just he's just one of those stars that like surpasses even being a star. He's just like one of those people that are so famous and has been around that like I can't think of a time when he wasn't, and it will be weird when he's not. Like, it's just it's like the Beatles for me or whatever. It's just like they've always been in my life. I can't really remember the first time I heard them, but I feel like it just was like out the womb and there they were. And that's sort of like with Jack Nicholson. Like, I guess maybe the first thing I saw him was maybe Little Shop of Horrors. But I'm trying to think of like what would be the Jack Nicholson movie I watched when I was like 4 or 5.
In the original, you saw the original Little Shop of Horrors when you were 4 or 5?
Yeah, I remember it being on TV, and because my mom was a big horror movie fan. And definitely watching that, and definitely, like, I don't think I knew that was Jack Nicholson, but I saw that movie, and he has a big, great part in that as the guy who loves going to the dentist. So it's definitely, like, an interesting... Yeah, he's just always been around, and I've always loved his movies. And I've also always been fascinated by people who do terrible Jack Nicholson impersonations. That's was such a staple of like bad late 80s stand-up comedy, was somebody doing a Jack Nicholson impersonation. There was a moment in my life when I wanted to do like a mixtape of find all the bad Jack Nicholson impersonations and just make a 30-minute mega mix of that. Because what I love about when people do Jack Nicholson impersonations, they always love to take their hand, pull their hair up to give themselves this sort of bigger widow's peak or bigger forehead, and then they do the voice. And they always only really do mostly the way he is in 5 Easy Pieces. Like that, they kind of are just doing their version of the chicken salad sandwich scene, and that's sort of like every bad comedian's Jack Nicholson impersonation.
Or The Shining.
Or The Shining. But yeah, I mean, I'm a kid of the 80s, so I also was like, I probably had a poster of him as the Joker in my bedroom. You know, like I definitely was like into Jack Nicholson, still into Jack Nicholson. I would watch anything he does. Like and I enjoy everything. He's one of those people to me that even if the movie is not great, he is great in it. Like if he's phoning it in any of these movies, I can't tell because he's so fascinating to me. And will always be. What is your favorite Jack Nicholson performance or movie? Or is this it? Is it Wolf?
No. No.
Where do you go when you're like that's when he was really that's the one?
Well, so with Nicholson, it's like there are like a lot of actors who start when they're young. There are kind of 3 phases, and for him, kind of 4 phases of Nicholson. So yeah. Little Shop of Horrors is part of that pre-fame Jack Nicholson, and that stuff is great. And I think I figured out why we have these weird obsessions. Because my mother was not into horror films, but she really loved Little Shop of Horrors. So I saw that at a very early age and sort of inherited it as being equivalent to any other great movie.
Yeah.
And that basically is up until Easy Rider.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting and exciting period to explore, learn about Jack Nicholson, because he's sort of like a lot of people of that era. He's sort of at the hub of a lot of stuff.
Yeah, helping make the Monkeys. Like,
right.
That's amazing.
Yeah, he was one of the producers of the Monkeys. So, yeah, he's really just I always learned of him as a highly intellectual actor. Like one of the rare actors who can actually play intelligence because either because he has it or because he's good at playing it. But there's something really intelligent about him as an actor, as an archetype. So then we have is just the classic Jack Nicholson, which is pretty much, I would say, Easy Rider through Reds.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I would say that's the run of young great, because he was never young. By the time we met him, he was in his 30s as an actor. Even when he was a young actor, he was in these films that most people didn't see. They were kind of weird little hipster things or B movies, the kind of things that he's very inspirational to actors, because if you're an actor who's working in a lot of crappy stuff in your 20s, you sort of look at someone like Jack Nicholson as, oh, well, this is what I'm working towards. At any rate, so he has this fantastic run, and my favorite stuff is probably in that in that area. I mean, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is amazing. The Last Detail, Chinatown, The Missouri Breaks, The Shining. Reds, he's only in it very briefly, but that might be one of my favorite performances of his.
He's great. Yeah, he's great in it. Yeah.
And then we get, I guess, he moves into playing more of a actual middle-aged man actor, like Terms of Endearment. He's going out with the mom, and Pritzi's Honor. He's sort of old and fat, and this is the salacious, fat, devilish, very Jack Nicholson,
very devilish, more of a creep, more of a jerk, more of like kind of a bad guy. Not like bad, but like definitely like you're the person causing problems for all the other people in the movie. So the era, it feels like, for this part of his career.
Yeah, and I feel like it's also the first point when Jack Nicholson stopped being totally cool. Like, you've heard people start to talk about how he's just doing an impression of himself, and that there's a level of self-parody to it. And I think that's just the nature of becoming iconic. Some of this stuff is some of my favorite. I love The Two Jakes. Everyone loves A Few Good Men. I feel like Wolf is in this era, and Blood and Wine. Those are two of my favorite.
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson, like, middle-aged, still, like, it's creepy that he's hooking up with the young actress in it, but it's not impossible. As once we get to About Schmidt, it's sort of like, now he's playing old Jack, and I don't know if we're going to get another Jack Nicholson film, but that, like, the stuff from that is, the best of that is The Departed, The Bucket List, and Anger Management, and About Schmidt. Are all a fully gray old man Jack. Yeah. He's no longer, if he is hooking up with the young actress, it's played as a joke, and it's not, we're not supposed to take it seriously. So my favorite, it's so hard to pick. Because I want to pick one, it's like my favorite for The World Is Wrong would be this or Blood and Wine.
Yeah.
The Two Jakes.
I still have not seen The Two Jakes. I was afraid to watch The Two Jakes.
I think Two Jakes is great. Yeah, we'll definitely do an episode about that. There's very few of his films and performances I don't like. I don't love the original Batman. I get what he's doing, but it's too much.
I love that movie. I love his performance in that movie.
I'm too much of a Who fan to really dig him and Tommy, but I'll allow it. I don't know. Did you see The Crossing Guard?
No, I've never seen that. No.
Yeah, I don't. A Sean Penn film. Yeah. So anyway, instead of answering your question about what my favorite Jack Nicholson is, I decided to whip out my long list of favorites. So, but what about? Okay, so let's talk about Nicholson and Nichols. You've seen how many of those films?
I've seen all but Carnal Knowledge. I've not seen Carnal Knowledge, but I saw the other two. I've seen Heartburn and I've seen The Fortune.
So I didn't really 100% describe Carnal Knowledge. It's Jack Nicholson and Art Garfunkel, back when Art Garfunkel was a movie star, following these two guys from college into middle age as sexist young men becoming sexist old men and treating Candice Bergen and Anne Margaret particularly poorly. Anne Margaret's amazing in the film. Candice Bergen is very Candice Bergen in the film. And Nicholson has these scenes where he's in a towel sitting at a chair smoking a cigarette with his belly hanging out, kind of I don't know, being terrible to Anne Margaret, that are sort of ugly and charismatic. And I remember reading magazines from around that time. I was just, like, they were old magazines that I found when I was a little bit older in the later 70s, reading about it. And something about that seemed to have a big impact. And it's only 71. It's not, this is before The Last Detail and Five Easy Pieces and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And there's something, he's playing this weird, amoral, like a bad, ugly guy who you can't take your eyes off of. And it has a almost Stanley Kowalski kind of quality, except if Stanley Kowalski were fat and smart instead of dumb, instead of buff and dumb. But yeah, anyway, you recently seen Heartburn.
Yeah.
The Nora Ephron.
Oh, it's so good.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
That is a great movie. And that's a movie that I never wanted to watch because the video box is so boring. It was like one of those movies where it's like famous people in it. And like, that's all we're going to give you on the video box. Like, okay. So I never watched it. But then seeing it, that is definitely one of my favorite Meryl Streep roles. But then, like, he is so good and he's such a jerk in it. But like, you kind of feel sorry for him. You kind of love him. You kind of hate him. You really hate him. Like, it's a very emotional ride. But because it's Mike Nichols, it's also very funny, and it's incredibly well written. That's a Nora Ephron script, and so it has that Nora Ephron thing where it's like very human but very clever, and just like, it's brilliant. I love that movie. That's probably out of the movies he did with Mike Nichols, that's probably my favorite one.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen Carnal Knowledge, but like, there's something about that movie that really, and I watched it because when we were doing Bewitched, I was like, oh, I should watch some other Nora Ephron. And so I was totally floored by that movie. I think that script is so good. The acting is so good. There's that great scene where him and Meryl Streep are like singing about babies or whatever. That part's really good. Like if you want to see Jack Nicholson versus Yakov Smirnoff, that's a movie for you to watch. Like that, it's all the things I didn't know I wanted in a movie. In that movie, it's gut wrenching and funny at the same time. Like it's really really good.
And then there's The Fortune, which we already discussed.
Yeah,
a little bit. Just a great weird film. I was not aware that it was a favorite of the Coens.
Yeah,
but that makes a lot of sense.
Total sense. Yeah,
and that has Stockard Channing being so great.
Oh, yeah.
Really going toe to toe with Nicholson and Beatty, and
that's such a weird movie. The part where Jack Nicholson is just outside the airplane. You're like, what is going on? That's like the beginning of the movie. Like Warren Beatty being like, "Hey, where's my pal?" He's just outside the window, just like what is this? What is going on? Yeah, very weird, very good. All these movies are great.
Yes, and then I know we're taking a while to get to actually talking about Wolf, but I feel like Wolf isn't just... If you just see Wolf without context, I don't know. To me, the context is part of the fun. And then briefly with Mike Nichols, what about Mike Nichols for you? Is he one of your favorites? He's one of my favorites.
I love him. I definitely have some big gaps in his film. Like I've never seen Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Like I've never seen that movie. I have it in my house, but I've never seen it. But like I'm, like any young man, grew up just like worshiping The Graduate, like loving that movie so much. And like there was a time in high school, maybe middle school too, where that was like my favorite movie, where like I thought Dustin Hoffman was the coolest, loved the Simon and Garfunkel, like the style of that movie, like that movie's just something so cool about it and just so great. And like that's a movie that I could literally watch over and over again still and never get sick of. Like I love that movie so much. But I also, as a young person, watched Catch-22, and that had such an impact on me. And I like Day of the Dolphin. I really like that movie. It's a weird movie. I enjoy it. I think Working Girl is great. We actually have Working Girl Christmas ornaments. So every Christmas, my wife has Working Girl Christmas ornaments that her friend made her. And so we hang those up on the tree with care every year. And Postcards from the Edge is great, and The Birdcage is brilliant, and Primary Colors doesn't really work, but it's interesting. And like, I think he is a great filmmaker. And like, what's interesting about him is that he can just get a good performance from everybody. Like this movie, like that we're talking about, all the performances are great. Like you just have that talent as a director, and he's also like a theater guy, that you're able to just pull these amazing performances and even surprising performances from people that you already knew were great, but giving you like a new thing from them, which is fantastic. I know. I'm just really happy that we're finally talking about one of his movies, because I definitely think he's one of my favorite filmmakers for sure.
Yeah. I the only ones I'd want to add in there would be like, have you seen Closer?
No, it's another one that I have. Be in the right mood for it.
Oh man, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf and look, those are other than The Graduate. Those would be my top three.
Exciting.
Would be and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. At this point in my life, I might like it more than The Graduate. Just sort of, it's like comparing it to the Beatles. It's like the Graduate is like Help, and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf is like the White Album. Even though it's the chronology doesn't work, but just one is a very youthful film, and it speaks to you when you're a young man, maybe a young person. But Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf speaks to you all throughout your life and more the older you get.
It's crazy. Mike Nichols only directed 22 things, which is not a lot, really. Like compared to other directors. Like that's a small amount of movies, but maybe that's how he was able to keep the quality up, is that he, was smart and made a movie when he felt like he could make a good movie, as opposed to just having to crank them out.
And he's doing theater all throughout.
Oh, yeah.
it's not just doing a play here or there. He's doing some of the major Broadway plays. He was the director of Barefoot in the Park. He directed a lot of the early Neil Simon stuff. So The Odd Couple, he did Plaza Suite. He did Hurly Burly. Was his he directed that. He directed the original production of Death and the Maiden.
Wow.
And Spam-A-Lot. And there's a bunch in here, and he started with An Evening with Mike Nichols and Elaine May, who also, she sort of hangs over all of this in a way that I will never really be known, because she's not she's an uncredited writer, I'm sure well paid at this point on this film.
I read an article about that, and it said that she did the 5th and final rewrite of this movie and got along very well with the original writer, and that was the final version of the script. Was the one that this past that she did. I read an article from when this movie came out talking about it.
So in the scene that we played at the beginning, it ends with James Spader saying suede shoes or something like that, and then Nicholson just says asparagus, and I just feel like that's an Elaine May line.
That feels right.
Yeah.
And this is the first time in forever that she collaborated with Mike Nichols, even in a weird way of being a rewrite. And then this kind of kickstarts them working together again, because then she went on to write The Birdcage and Primary Colors. So this kind of, brought them back together creatively, which is exciting.
And I got to say, Primary Colors I think it's great. It's very weird.
Very weird.
I feel like in a strange, it's very different, but in a strange way, it would make a nice double bill with The November Men, in that the whole time, with November Men, the whole time I'm figuring, am I watching a movie or an assassination plot? And with this Primary Colors, I feel like, am I watching a movie or a propaganda film? And if it's a propaganda film, it's a really weird one because it's very critical of its subject, but at the same time, it's also feels like it might be propaganda for its subject. And ultimately it was, because it didn't do anything to hurt the Clintons, and John Travolta's amazing in it.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, and Emma Thompson.
And
that movie. It's a very interesting movie. I saw it in the theater when it came out, and I liked it. Yeah. But it definitely was it's weird.
Yeah, it is a weird film. 98, isn't that the same year as Forrest Gump?
No, Forrest Gump was 94.
Okay. It's the year of Wolf. Okay, finally, many, way too long into this episode, we get to actually talking about this movie. But I felt like this is our first time touching on these artists, it feels important to get there. We're not going to do this with James Spader and Michelle Pfeiffer and Christopher Plummer, but we could. So I don't think we need to walk through every beat of this film. It's a werewolf film. Where would you say that this, since you've probably watched a lot more werewolf films than I have, where would you say that this film diverges from your typical werewolf movie?
Well, like I said, they never fully turn into wolves that you see. I think they do by the end. But through the movie, he really just looks like Neil Young, basically. and so it's more like their behavior is more wolf-like. It's almost like it's not like it's nighttime and the moon is up and he's just running around the woods. He does that for sure, but there's also just sort of him around people and just doing dog-like behavior. He's doing a lot of scratching. Just seeing Jack Nicholson howl at the moon is amazing. And the same goes with James Spader. Just the part where he's smelling Michelle Pfeiffer, just smelling her.
That's the scene. That's the Nicholas when the movie goes into Nicolas Cage land. I'm like, this is happening in
so
a whole.
Good. And it's so good. But then you have Jack Nicholson just grabbing that delicious looking meat off his secretary's desk and just like eating her like kind of rare roast beef sandwich or pastrami sandwich or whatever that is. And so like he's not. Yeah, it's not like American Werewolf in London or The Wolfman where he's a normal guy and then the moon, and then at night the moon comes up and then he's a wolf. Like they're kind of slowly cranking it up with all these characters, which is great. I think that's more interesting. It makes it more like a disease. It makes it more like maybe these people are just insane. You just don't understand. You don't know what's going on, and I love that. And like I like to. I don't know. Just I like that Jack Nicholson slowly becoming aware that this is happening to him, but not picking up right away. But other people around kind of being like, "This is weird. This is strange." Yeah. So like,
yeah,
and you don't have the classic like, "I'm hunting the werewolf. I got my silver bullet. I must kill him. I'm the werewolf hunter." Like you don't really have that in this movie either. Which is like you have police in there trying to like Richard Jenkins trying to solve a crime, but it's different. It's not like let's grab the villagers and we're gonna stop the werewolf. Like doesn't really happen so much. Yeah, and that's why it doesn't feel like a horror movie. It's more of like a character study. It's more of a weird, satire on like masculinity and in the 90s. It's not a horror. This is not a werewolf. It's called Wolf, but it does not fit in with the other werewolf movies.
The scenes where Nicholson is becoming aware of his wolfenness are for me the other part of like because throughout at the beginning of this movie, the movie starts. He's a weak. It's weird. He's simultaneously supposed to be someone who has earned the respect. Sorry, motorcycle going by. Who simultaneously earned the respect of his peers and all these authors. He's a beloved older editor, but he's also this sort of weak, cuckolded man who doesn't stand up for himself and is about to get pushed out of his job, and then he runs into a wolf in Vermont, which we're told over and over again doesn't happen and couldn't have happened, and then the wolf bites him, and that's where the yada 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 it's a werewolf movie kicks in. But watching him go from the weak man to the strong man through the senses of the wolf, basically through hearing and smelling, which are two, I don't know, they're not easy things to convey cinematically. It's not like he displays these feats of strength. He displays feats of sense. Like he gains his eyesight back. There's this great point where David Hyde Pierce, who's awesome in this movie, and there's all these great TV people who I feel like are right before they hit. Like whoever the casting director who worked on this was always aware, like, oh, well, there's this guy who's going to be in a TV show, David Schwimmer. We'll have him play the cop. And Allison Janney, she's going to be in this political show. We'll have her play, even though I'm sure it wasn't planned that way, but it's just the casting pool that they were picking from.
I love seeing Peter Gerety. I love Peter Gerety. Like he's so good in
fantastic.
The Wire and Homicide: Life on the Street. And here he's sort of playing a cop and being a security guard for Michelle Pfeiffer's mansion. It doesn't work out well for him. Peter Gerety fans, I'm sorry. Yeah. But, did you notice, am I crazy? Was her picture of her brother, is that Matt LeBlanc? Like they have, like she's like, but she talks about her brother, and there's a picture of him, and I swear to God, it's a picture of Matt LeBlanc, which would make sense if David Schwimmer's in this, and it's like this is the same casting person because Friends started in 94, 95.
Yeah, it was this same year. It was,
but if it's not Matt LeBlanc, it's a person who looks like Matt LeBlanc in the picture, because this character is not in the movie other than in the picture, and I swear it's him, but maybe it's just another Italian American, and I'm just being prejudiced.
I actually have the film up right now.
I remember it's the part where she's talking about her brother. It's like when they first
Yeah, no,
hang
I found
out.
it.
And I swear, when I saw that picture, I was like, that looks like a young Matt LeBlanc. Like he posed for this picture. But he's not credited on IMDb like as an actor because he's not in the movie. He's just a picture on a mantle. So like you don't credit those people.
So it's
really.
no, it isn't Matt LeBlanc, but it is Justin Kirk.
Oh, okay.
From the TV show Weeds and a lot of other things since then. I'm pretty sure. But wild. So
okay, so not
you
Matt
caught
LeBlanc.
that almost.
I knew it was somebody familiar. I was like, that person looks familiar.
That's a good catch. That is a good catch. But my point was that the way that they demonstrate Jack Nicholson becoming a wolf with all these actors that he gets to act off of, it's all, I find it really engaging. Those are my favorite parts of the film. But as far as like now that we've seen so many films about superheroes and people transforming into things, generally they do that in a way that is a lot, I don't know, that is less subtle and doesn't feel as good as just Jack Nicholson walking out and all of a sudden being able to hear all these conversations and smell the alcohol on someone's breath and smell the lover on his wife's robe and all these things that, I don't know, empower this older man, which in the context of all these Jack Nicholson, Mike Nichols films, it is the most, I guess maybe now that they're old guys, they're kind of reveling in being old guys and they're able to throw the young guy, James Spader, under the bus. Whereas when they were making Carnal Knowledge and The Fortune, they were those guys. I don't know.
I mean, that scene in the bathroom is amazing. This like seeing these two actors be just like it's like a literal pissing contest. And just like the fact that it takes place at a urinal, it's just like, it's so good. And it's funny because it's like the way, like you're right, the way he kind of starts ineffectual in this movie and becomes more confident and more, cool. It's almost as if he was bitten by a Jack Nicholson and becomes sort of the Jack Nicholson that we know and love in movies is sort of what happens to this character. He becomes more of a jerk. He becomes more sexy. He becomes like, because like Jack Nicholson in movies has always had this kind of animal quality to him. Like always, there's just something about like the animal changes. Sometimes he's a snake. Sometimes he is a wolf. Sometimes, and so to have a movie where he actually turns into an animal, but really he just becomes more like Jack Nicholson, like his, and it's funny to me, like you make a movie about a wolf man, and what are wolf men famous for? That they grow all this hair, but you cast one of the most famous, like balding men, like the person who's famous for his receding hairline, and you cast him as a wolf man, and then you don't fill that in, you don't fix it. He is basically a werewolf with a receding hairline. I really like that. I think that's really funny. And there's something about the beginning that's like, I mean, I know why. It's like that beginning reminds me so much of The Shining. Just seeing Jack Nicholson driving a car in the snow, like it just feels so shining to me. And I guess at one point Stanley Kubrick was maybe considered to direct this, and he quickly turned it down. I don't know who pitched that idea before I went to Mike Nichols, but that's weird. But I just like, just seeing Jack Nicholson running around, just howling and acting like an animal is so fun. It's just so fun to watch. Like I can't get sick of it. It's really funny, and I think he knows it's funny. And that's what's so great about this movie is that like I think everybody who made this movie knows how funny it is, but they don't show their cards. Like they're doing all these things, but they're playing it like it's a serious movie. But that's what makes it funnier. Like if they leaned into it being like, it isn't as funny, it wouldn't be funny at all. But the fact that it is done like a drama makes it all the better. Like And even like if you go to IMDb, this isn't even listed as a comedy at all. It's drama first, then horror, and then romance. And comedy's not even a part of it. And I think that is, to me, is the main thing that everyone goes wrong with this movie, is not realizing it's funny. And once you realize that, or go in knowing that, I think you will enjoy the movie so much more, because then you really get so much out of it, understanding that this is supposed to be funny.
Yeah, but not jokes funny.
Not jokes funny. It's just it's a funny movie made by Mike Nichols, so it's a smart.
Yeah,
it's smart.
Yeah.
It's too smart. Maybe I think that's maybe the fault, is that this is not the movie that everybody wanted to see in the theater, so they were turned off by it, and the people who would have wanted to see this didn't know that that's what this was, and so like I think this, like, if anybody takes anything from this episode, is like, watch this movie knowing that it's an incredibly intelligent comedy, which you don't expect from a movie called Wolf with Jack Nicholson becoming a werewolf, but that is what this is. That's why it's a Mike Nichols movie. Just don't forget that. And I think people forgot that. Like, he's not going to make some dumb, crappy horror movie. Like that's not, why would he do that? He didn't need to make these movies. Like, he chose to make this movie. Yeah, it's I don't know, him becoming Jack Nicholson, it basically is kind of what this movie seems like to me. It's like him figuring out, like, this movie could be about what he was like in the 60s, figuring out what he needed to be in the 70s. Like in 1968, he's bitten by the Jack Nicholson werewolf, and then we get our 5 easy pieces. We get
the fortune, which I sort of sped through all of these. I did a quick rewatch of all three of those movies today.
Wow.
I didn't actually watch them all, so I was like, I've seen all three of them, so I sort of sped through. And what?
I can watch on a loop the part when he bounds up the staircase to catch his wife.
Yes,
that is so good. The way it's like him to, like, I can just, like, if I'm ever feeling blue, I wish there was like a button I can push and that could just appear on my TV. Just him bounding beautifully just up the staircase. So good.
Yeah. Yeah. He becomes a wolf. The wolf comes out when he finds out that Kate Nelligan, his wife, has been having an affair with James Spader, his protege. What a damning blow. And so there's a few things in this film that are handled really wonderfully. Something about Kate Nelligan's character. She's an actor that I am somewhat aware of, but I can't really, place anything in particular. And there is a particular thing she's doing in this film with a character that should be more unlikable than she is, and it's not, and it's kind of an empty role, but her moments, like the moment that follows that, really land in this way where, I don't know if that's Mike Nichols' direction or just like how he set her up to resonate in that way, but she's not as she's actually far less unsympathetic. That's a lot of double negatives in there. She's far more sympathetic than the character is necessarily written to be if it's in another movie. And I feel like what she's doing is pretty amazing in the film. I wouldn't say amazing. Let me back up. I don't want to oversell it, but I feel like that's a performance that I definitely didn't pay attention to on the first watch. But the more I watch it, the more I'm noticing very subtle things that she's doing and Nichols is picking up on.
It seems like the most grounded and real character in the movie. Like, she's existing in a movie that's not about a werewolf in a way. Like, the way she acts in it, like, it feels very natural and real. Like, there's something that you would not expect from in a movie called Wolf.
And can we talk about, there's two very subtle things that get communicated without being said, and I went back over and over to try and find out if I missed them. But one is when Christopher Plummer is offering Jack Nicholson the opportunity to quit or take a job that nobody would want after he's been bitten, but before he's really become a wolf. So while he's still a weak man. At some point in that conversation, Christopher Plummer divulges to Nicholson that it was James Spader's character, his protege, who betrayed him and has been campaigning for this job that he keeps saying that he will quit if they fire Jack Nicholson's the character Will. If they fire him, he'll quit. But in fact, he's been campaigning for the job. Yeah. And of course, we kind of know that because it's James Spader and he's a weasel at this point in his career and everything he's doing. But Christopher Plummer never explicitly says that the job's going to James Spader, and Nicholson never asks. And then the next time Nicholson shows up with Kate Nelligan and James Spader, he knows that Spader is the one, but it was never spoken. And there's a part, like, unless you remember it being spoken, that's just that's sort of the level of the sense of humor or the sense of intelligence that's in this film of like, okay, well, they just figured it out, or you figure it out. But did you pick up on that?
I thought that they actually said his name, but maybe I'm wrong. But I mean, I think it's also the thing of like, well, James Spader's there. Well, of course that's him. Like, we've seen his other movies. We know what James Spader gets up to. Like, clearly it could only be, it's not David Hyde Pierce. It's James Spader. Like, we all saw Pretty in Pink and Sex, Lies, and Videotape. We know what a weirdo this guy can be. Like, clearly he's the one up to some bad business.
Okay. Well, then the other thing is, so do you think Jack Nicholson killed Kate Nelligan? There's a whole point where and when he becomes a wolf, he thinks he killed his wife. No, but maybe he didn't kill his wife.
I think it was Spader. I think Spader did it to help frame and set up. I think that's when it becomes werewolf versus werewolf. And I think that's him fucking with Jack Nicholson. Or I mean, as the ending of the movie showed, like, Spader's a rapey werewolf. So maybe something went really badly between him and his mistress, like, this is, it's dark, but I don't think it was Jack Nicholson. I think that it was Spader. Jack Nicholson's a good werewolf. James Spader's a bad werewolf.
When Nicholson goes to meet a werewolf expert that one of his colleagues looks up on a very antiquated computer, sends him to Dr. Alizaeus, which every time I've watched this movie and he said that, I think Dr. Zaius.
Yes.
But he's not going to see an orangutan. He's going to see this scholar who knows a lot about werewolves, and he tells Jack Nicholson that the wolf that the curse of the wolf doesn't change the nature of the man. The wolf is the kind of wolf that the man was. And that was a great scene where he tells Nicholson that he's got some illness and he's going to die unless Nicholson bites him. And he asks him to bite him, and Nicholson sort of like, there's a little bit of a like weird gay panic moment of like, I mean, he has just bitten James Spader, but he's sort of like, I can't, he's almost like, kiss me first, just like give me, why me? I can't just bite you. You gotta make me want to bite you. So Spader is becoming a shitty werewolf, whereas Jack Nicholson is becoming a good werewolf. But okay, so let's go back. Going back to the murder of Kate Nelligan's character, which, by the way, the scene where where she confronts Jack Nicholson and asks him to take her back, and he turns her down. And then there's this reveal there's her face, and there's the reveal of Michelle Pfeiffer. It felt like a moment of, that was a really good shoot day for Mike Nichols. Like, it taps into some of the energy that's there in The Graduate. Just that one shot and that performance is like almost from another movie. Again, that's sort of what I'm talking about, how Kate Nelligan's character just gets more attention than that character would in another movie. Mm-hmm. And I just have such sympathy for her at that moment. Like, Jack Nicholson isn't really being a good guy, but he's being a wolf. So he doesn't have to be a good guy. He's owning his, I don't know, his masculinity or toxic masculinity, depends upon how you view the film. But when she's killed, and this is one of the things I was trying to figure out when I was watching the film, does Spader's character, the man, kill Kate Nelligan to frame Jack Nicholson? Or does James Spader, the wolf, kill Kate Nelligan? Because when I watch the scenes, like, when he becomes a wolf, his eyes get really weird. And it feels like the first time we see that is when he's sniffing up Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah. And
before that, he's just creepy James Spader.
Yeah.
But then she was killed by, like, when Richard Jenkins describes the murder, he describes it as being like she was attacked by an animal. So, I don't know. Jury's still out. I think if this went to trial, I think Will might still be convicted. I don't know.
That's what they try to do in the movie.
But that's one of those things where, again, the way all this is communicated leaves these questions, and I like that. It's just it's not, I don't know if it's like a sense of, when I say a sense of humor, I don't mean that it's always got to be funny. Yeah. Sometimes it could be a sense of humor about, like, just, okay, well, chew on that. You know, you don't really know.
And interesting enough, Kate Nelligan was in the 1979 version of Dracula, the Frank Langella one, as Lucy. So she's dabbled in 2 of the classic horror villain films.
Have you seen that one?
Oh, it's the best. That's the best version of Dracula. It's so good.
Really?
Oh, yeah, it's great. That's a great movie.
The best version of Dracula.
Yeah, directed by John Badham. Is that how you say it? Okay. Badham. Written by W.D. Richter. It's it was my mom's favorite. Maybe that's why I think it, because she thinks it's the best version of the book. But you have Laurence Olivier as Van Helsing. Donald Pleasance is in it. Like, it's a very well-made movie. It's a very good movie. And yeah, she's like the main lady in it. So yeah, watch that version of Dracula. Watch the 1979 Dracula. It's fantastic. And Frank Langella, brilliant as Dracula.
Okay.
And another interesting fact, the Kate Nelligan character in Wolf was originally going to be played by Mia Farrow, and Mike Nichols fought for it to be Mia Farrow, but the studio did not want Mia Farrow for fear of all the controversy that she was dealing with Woody Allen at the time.
And did you know that? So this must have been around the time, because there's a whole story that Mia Farrow basically told Mike was trying to get Mike Nichols to be her new boyfriend, like the rebound guy. After, again, for people who have been drawn into the soap opera of Woody Allen and Mia Farrow, that's one of the stories that goes around, is that she was he sort of desperately told him, like, you're going to marry me, and he was like, no.
Was he not with Diane Sawyer at the time?
Well, no, he was. That's sort of, it's sort of like Mia Farrow and Andre Previn, or Mia Farrow and Frank Sinatra. It's kind of was her MO a little bit. Again, in the realm of the gossipy world that everyone who got drawn into that drama got drawn into. This I'm repeating gossip repeated in these circles where there's so much gossip going on.
Ultimately, she's the one who turned the role down because she had a scheduling conflict. So he won out in trying to get her in the movie, and then she's like, I can't do it. So
I wonder if this...
Who knows? Like, and that would have been it. If that would have been weird with her, because she, to me, is so much more fragile seeming and looking.
Yeah.
That having the way Jack Nicholson treats his wife, if it was Mia Farrow, I feel that would be even more upsetting. That would feel not like a funny movie. That would feel like a very upsetting movie.
Yeah. In all kinds of ways. I think that was a bullet. That was a bullet dodged. A silver bullet. No silver bullets in this, by the way. And not even a Bob Seger cameo.
And it's worth to point out this is our second Richard Jenkins movie that we covered after The Imposters.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And Elaine May is the voice of the operator on the phone that calls, that does the wake-up call for Jack Nicholson in the hotel.
Actually, Richard Jenkins and Allison Janney, who were the lovers.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
They were together as the lovers in The Dastardly Terrorist Lovers in
clearly old friends.
Yes. Well, clear with this casting director. Clearly old friends with this casting director.
And it's weird that the lady from Fawlty Towers is in this movie. It's the only other thing I've ever seen her in.
Oh, yeah, she's great.
Prunella Scales, how did she get cast in this? That's so weird.
Because Mike Nichols loves her, and he's respectable enough to come over and play this role for her. Yeah. And, he's not going to ask her to say, Basil! So we haven't discussed the one thing we haven't discussed in this film really, other than the Ennio Morricone score and the Rick Baker makeup, which we can discuss or not, is Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah.
I have a feeling Michelle Pfeiffer is going to come up more over this next year. There's at least one other film that I have in mind in which she plays a similar kind of role. What do you think? Michelle Pfeiffer is a very conflicting actress for me because she's great and she's only gotten greater as she's gotten older, and usually in movies the role she's playing is not very interesting and is mostly cast because she's beautiful, but she also happens to be amazing, which is then Nicholson has a whole monologue directed at her that kind of describes this.
I think I understand what you're like now. You're very beautiful, and you think men are only interested in you because you're beautiful. But you want them to be interested in you because you're you. The problem is that aside from all that beauty, you're not very interesting. You're rude, you're hostile, you're sullen, you're withdrawn. I know you want someone to look past all that at the real person underneath. But the only reason that anyone would bother to look past all that is because you're beautiful. Ironic, isn't it? In an odd way, you're your own problem.
Sorry. Wrong line. I am not taken aback by your keen insight and suddenly challenged by you.
It does describe something about Michelle Pfeiffer on film. Like, it's not her fault because she almost always transcends those roles and is better than those roles. But what about you? Are you, like, I've talked about how I don't love Kim Basinger. I feel like she's in the same type of actress, but I think Michelle Pfeiffer always makes the role better in a way that I don't feel about Kim Basinger. Who plays that kind of role.
I love Michelle Pfeiffer, and I agree. She just gets better and better. But I've always liked her a lot. Like, I think she's really great in Into the Night, the Jeff Goldblum, John Landis movie. She's great in that. Mm-hmm. She was great with Jack Nicholson in Witches of Eastwick. I'm a huge Married to the Mob fan. Love that movie. And she is a really good in that movie, and she's playing kind of a character different than what she normally does, which I really like too. Yeah, I don't know. I've always been a fan. Like, I loved her as Catwoman. I'm like, Age of Innocence she's great in that. Like, Dangerous Minds is great. Like, yeah, I'm a big fan. I think she's What Lies Beneath is so good. Like, yeah, I think she's just like, you always know you're gonna get something great from her, and she just has that star quality. Like, like, just with Jack Nicholson, it's like you show up and you just have a presence. You just have a way. Like, if this was an underwritten role, and maybe it was, she makes it work, and she makes it so good just by being there and being Michelle Pfeiffer in this role.
Yeah. She does a lot with not a lot. And she's excellent in it. A lot of those films that you mentioned were films that I'm not that into, so I think that's probably probably explains why there's a weird, lack of, not even respect, a lack of knowledge around her films. So to be corrected. I mean, but again, I think I've seen most of them. But I love her in Dangerous Liaisons. That's one that I think is fantastic. And isn't she in that Oscar bait Sean Penn movie?
Oh, I Am Sam?
That everyone likes to make fun of?
Yes. Yes, she is.
I seem to remember thinking that the meanness directed at that film was unfair. So
well, clearly you didn't see the scene where he falls down the stairs with the cake.
was that really terrible?
That's the only part that I've seen is him excited about a cake and he falls down. It's kind of slapsticky. I don't think it's supposed to be unintentional slapstick.
Well,
how's Tequila Sunrise? Have you seen that?
That's the one I want to do. I want to do Tequila Sunrise as an episode. I recently rewatched that film, and it is wild. It is a very pro-cocaine movie from a Just Say No time. And Kurt Russell is fantastic in it. Maybe one of his best roles. Definitely one of his best roles. Maybe his best. I don't know. And it's directed by Robert Towne from his own script, and it has Arliss Howard shows up in it as a young Arliss Howard, and it's peak Mel Gibson and peak Michelle Pfeiffer they have a way too long love scene in the hot tub.
Says you.
I mean, exactly. Crazy, lovemaking scene rivals the lovemaking, the weird lovemaking from Wilder Palm, where Arliss Howard and Deborah Winger somehow get on top of a bed canopy. In this case, there's similar feats of weird physics that somehow sex between amazing people transcends in films. Tequila Sunrise is one. Maybe we just did it.
Well, I'm excited to watch that movie.
Yeah. And Raul Julia. Oh my God, yes, and Raul Julia in a great Raul Julia role. And J.T. Walsh also.
Oh wow,
fantastic
what a cast.
In this film. Yeah, it's nuts. It's a great film. Okay, well, I think, have we left any meat on this bone, my fellow wolf? Have we sucked the marrow out of this film? Is there anything else?
It's a movie to be experienced. Like, you could talk about the plot, but like, you really just have to watch it. You just have to see. Like, I feel it's a movie that really went for it and didn't get credit for really going for it. And like, I think this should be a part of somebody's movie watching this month for October. Like, if you're like trying to find, if you think you've seen all the horror movies or whatever, yeah, this isn't quite a horror movie, but it fits, and it should be what. And
wait, what did you call this month?
Oh, I've always called this month Shocktober.
No, you just called it October.
Well,
it's Wrongtober.
Wrongtober. For the month of Wrongtober. Rent, find, Wolf. It shouldn't be too hard to find, right?
It's on Amazon Prime.
It's on Amazon Prime. It's in everybody's home then already.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's so good, and I feel like James Spader doesn't quite get the cool credit yet that he should be getting, like the love that Nicolas Cage often gets. There should be some of that love kind of splintered off and given to James Spader, especially in this movie, because like you said, when he goes wild in this movie, it is very, very interesting.
And when he's weaselly, he's very interesting. That whole bit about, I'll quit. Just tell me to quit and I'll do it.
Yeah.
What can I do? It's like the most passive aggressive.
And again, like this movie could have been totally ridiculous, and in some people's eyes it is, but to me it's not, because these actors are so good, and they're so good in this movie that it keeps it from being silly. And it just like the way James Spader is in this, it's like this is one of his best performances of the time, I think. Like he's really, it's that good sleazy creepy Spader that you know and love and want. But I think he kind of turns it up a bit in this, more so than he's allowed to in other movies. He really is allowed to kind of go big, but without derailing the movie, because it's already about werewolves, so you can go a little bit big. You can get away with it.
Not just werewolves, but really rich werewolves.
Shitty rich werewolves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Brian.
And I'm AJ.
And we have a podcast called The Director's Wall,
examining a filmmaker's career, film by film. First up was M. Night Shyamalan, then Francis Ford Coppola. Who's next? Is there anything to this whole auteur theory? Find out on
The Director's Wall.
Subscribe via Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or your preferred listening platform.
Hey babies, it is me, the self-appointed Commissioner of Comedy, James Matter. I just want to tell you that every week I'll be wherever you listen to podcasts with my show, The Commissioner of Comedy. I've been doing this, babies, for almost 20 years, grinding up and down, and I'm here to convey it to you about the do's and don'ts of the comedy scene, the proper etiquette, the unwritten rules, if you will. Whether you're just a fan, or you're a young buck starting out, a grizzled old vet, or just someone who wants to peek behind the curtain and see how the sausage gets made, tune into the podcast, The Commissioner of Comedy. This is what it's about. It's only on Paper House Network, and it's for you, babies. It's for you.
Dear listener, if you are just discovering our podcast, you can find all of our episodes on our website at theworldiswrongpodcast.com. You can also write to us at contact@theworldiswrongpodcast.com or follow us on Instagram at theworldiswrongpodcast. And now, back to the show. Who doggies? Well, that was Wolf. That was Wolf, people. That was Wolf. And Brian, we forgot to mention something last week for September 30th, 1955. That was our 50th episode.
Holy moly! Are you kidding me?
Yes, and that doesn't include, we've had bonus episodes. We've had more than 50, but that's 50 official episodes.
That's crazy. Yeah. It doesn't feel like that many. I guess that's good.
Yeah, you must have been there for at least 40 of them.
Maybe a little less than that, but
no, you were there for all of them to some degree.
Even still, like that's amazing. That's 50 movies in now that the world is wrong about. That means the world is pretty darn wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
if season 1 and a little bit into season 2 makes 50, like, man, and like the thing is, I look at our list of all the possible episodes I want to do, and there's still so much more.
I keep adding things to my list. My
list has gotten so long. I mean, I might not do all of them, but it's like, man, there's a lot of movies the world is wrong about, and I didn't realize how much weight I've been carrying with me this whole lifetime of all these movies that I know the world is wrong about that I've always had to defend time and time again. It's a lot of work. I'm glad that we're kind of like going through it all, helping me.
Yeah, I'm here for you, Brian. I'm here for you, Brian.
Which movie do you think you've defended the longest? Is it Mad Dog Time? Like in your lifetime, like which movie do you think you've like had the most having to defend that it's good to people?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't even know the answer to that question myself, but that's an interesting thing to ponder. Like, what has been your longest defense?
I'm trying to think if there's some film I saw as a kid that I've been carrying around for a long time. You know, when I was really young, really young, my favorite movie was No Deposit, No Return, which was I think it was a Tim Conway, Don Knotts.
Yeah.
I think that they also did the Apple Dumpling Gang, right?
Which is more loved than No Deposit, No Return.
I remember those two films were I haven't gone back to them because I don't want to ruin it, but it's possible. It's I think that I'm a little bit afraid of that one.
For me, it's an obvious one. It's kind of painfully obvious, but for me, it was Return of the Jedi. Like when I was a kid, I loved that one the most out of all the Star Wars movies. And everybody else was like, "Oh, Empire Strikes Back's the best one. The Ewoks are stupid." And I'm like, "No, the Ewoks make it the best one. It's the best one because of the Ewoks." And I still have that argument with people to this day. Since age 5, I've been defending the Ewoks.
Yeah.
In Return of the Jedi. I knew back then in my heart that we would have a show someday where we could defend all these movies, you know.
Well, I used to get beat up. I used to get beat up for defending Star Wars, the original one, when it first came out. But I don't think...
Really? Didn't everybody like that movie though?
No. I mean,
really?
No. I mean, I know it was very, very popular, but in my what would it have been 4th grade, I started a new school in 4th grade that year, and I showed up and was just like, I'm into Star Wars, and next thing you know, kids are mean.
Were these Star Trek fans?
I think they were just. I think they were just kids who liked, boys who liked cars and football.
Man, it's weird to think that there was a time when liking that movie made you kind of like a nerd or a target, because now it just seems like NFL, like Star Wars is sports now, where it's just like everybody loves it. Every dad loves those movies. Like, that's funny. But man, 50 episodes. Congratulations.
Congratulations to you and to all you listeners. If you've listened to all 50,
wow.
Congratulations is due to you as well.
Have we gotten one listen per every 50 state of America?
I don't know. I don't know if that's true. I don't want to crunch the numbers right now. I want to say that it continues to be a source of I don't know, no surprise and a certain amount of annoyance that we still have our lowest listenership in Olympia, Washington, where we're both from.
It's like those guys, forget it.
Today we're recording this on the day that September 30th, 1955 came out. I looked at it. There were we had like 20 downloads in New Jersey, and like I go to like Olympia 1. Whoever you are, thank you.
Thanks, you. Mom.
Yeah.
Anyways,
okay, enough. So we're in the throes, or we're not in the throes. We're at the onset of Wrongtober, and we worked on a project many years ago that has a sort of a seasonal quality. It's something that a client of mine that I haul out perennially around the holidays to promote the singles that we created together. This is a cat named Shmushkin.
Yeah.
And his song, his autumnal love song, Punkin' Lovin'.
Great song.
Yeah. And we worked on a documentary that never really saw the light of
Lost.
day.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I thought about it the other day because I helped direct it. I feel like you and I directed it together. Would you say that's kind of what happened?
Oh, yes, definitely.
And we followed around basically a group of fans, Shmushkin fans, and visited, kind of checked in with them, see how they're doing. It was amazing. The one guy we followed to a pumpkin patch, and he actually found a pumpkin that looks like an ass. That was the most thrilling. That was the most thrilling moment of that documentary.
Now, I think you're forgetting something here, Brian. We weren't just following around Shmushkin fans. We were following around the Shmushkin hate group, the anti-Shmushkinites.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. That's what it was.
Yes.
Yeah, because there was a guy did a CD burning.
Yes.
Like, not burning the CD like on a computer, but actually setting them on fire because he was so offended by the lyrics of his songs.
Yeah.
Why didn't that get finished? That was good. That was a good movie. Let's finish that. Let's put that out for the world. Like, it can only be like...
You want to hear something? Want to hear something?
Under 30... Yeah.
You know what that is? That's a bag of little mini DV tapes. I have the masters right here.
I'm ready to finish
this
movie.
You want to make the Shmushkin movie as the follow-up to Make Popular Films?
You know what? I do. It's the only movie that I worked on that's a lost movie. Actually, no, it's not true. You and I made another movie that I also never finished.
Oh, yeah?
Which
one was that?
Remember that one movie where I made you stand in a park and pretend to yell at a cell phone?
Oh, yeah.
I never finished that movie, but I have that scene uncut.
I feel like that was not one of my greater performances.
Maybe that's why I never did anything with it. No, it didn't work. But
anyway, so
but I felt
go on.
Yeah,
no,
finish. I feel like we should finish this movie before next Wrongtober. We should get it done.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm down. I tell you what. Just so the listeners can get a sense of what we're talking about, and because it's like a minute and a half long song, I'm just going to drop Punkin' Lovin' in here.
Yes, please.
So you can get a sense of what we're talking about, and I'll include links in the show notes so you can get your Shmushkin on for the holiday seasons.
I was so lonely last Halloween. I don't know what came over me. The jack-o'-lantern winked at me and I responded accordingly. Yeah, I fucked a pumpkin. What can I say? I fucked a pumpkin. Anyway, who's for judging? Pumpkin loving. I went all the way and the candle wax mingled with my juice. The sad fact is I really had no excuse, 'cause she was sleeping in a very next room, just getting off on her witch's broom while I fucked a pumpkin. What can I say? I fucked a pumpkin. Anyway, who's for judging? Pumpkin loving. I went all the way with a pumpkin. Pumpkin loving, yeah. Pumpkin loving, I went all the way.
If you like Punkin' Lovin', you're gonna love Christmas Cunnilingus. That's all I'm gonna say. So,
who doesn't?
Who doesn't? Okay, well, that was a fun little song. I'm glad. Thanks, Brian, for letting me play that. I do hope we get to finish that film. Now let's just tell the listeners, of course, we love to hear from you. We don't hear from you enough. We're like, well, you never write to us. You never call. No.
You're so skinny. What? You got to eat more food. What are you doing? You're not eating enough.
My Jewish grandmother and your Italian grandmother just got together and ganged up on our audience. So yes, please write to us at contact@theworldiswrongpodcast.com. And you can find all of our episodes at The World Is Wrong, or at www.theworldiswrongpodcast.com. We have 2 social media sort of faces. One on Instagram, and Brian, you pretty much handle the Instagram.
Pretty much, for the most part, yes. That's all me.
Yeah. Sometimes if you write to us privately, we may, one of the other of us might respond on the DMs. But in general, you're posting those. I'm doing all the editing and putting them all together for you. But you're writing what goes in there for the most part, and you're responsible for that content. And and then over in the ugly world of Twitter, that's what I get to handle. So I'm over there handling the Twitter account. If you see me liking or putting out stuff that's movie related, there you can know it's probably coming from me, because Brian doesn't want to have anything to do with Twitter. It's
an ugly world that I
terrible
don't
place.
want anything to do with.
Yes.
It's like, I think of it as sort of like in Beetlejuice when they leave the house and they're in that desert planet with the sandworms. That's like Twitter to me.
Well, thanks for giving me that job. I get all the fun stuff. You get to do all the nice pictures, and I get to get on and argue about the value of Adam McKay's political films.
Do you like Adam McKay's political films?
I love Adam McKay's political films.
I've never seen Vice. I heard it's good.
Did you see The Big Short?
Loved it. It's great.
Have you seen Margin Call?
No, I don't know what that is.
Oh, if you like The Big Short, you should also see Margin Call. It's a great little, it's a star-studded film about the same dynamic. Jeremy Irons is in it, and Kevin Spacey, and Demi Moore, and Paul Bettany, and it's on and on and on. It's just like, it's a really, it's if you do anyway. Yes, Twitter I'm handling, Instagram you're handling, and you can find us. They're both, let's see, on, just look in the show notes. I don't even remember because it's confusing. I know on Instagram we're at The World Is Wrong Podcast, and on Twitter we're something else.
I think it's like World Is Wrong Pod, because there is already an at World Is Wrong, and that is definitely not us.
Yes.
So don't bother those people about movies. They don't want to hear about it. So
in fact, if you're not already on Twitter, don't even go there. But if you are, if you're addicted as you can get on that, that's where you can find us. And next week we're going to have a special guest co-host, and we are going to be talking about the film Okja, a very, very, very scary film from the director Bong Joon-ho. And Jen Brown, your fellow Austinite, will be joining us to discuss this film. And I got to tell you, it's a good episode. You should stick around for that.
Great.
So I guess that brings to a close our first entry in our month of wrongness, Wrongtober. Thank you, Brian, for for sniffing this film up with me.
Just marking my territory.
Until next time, it falls to me to remind you all that however much fun we've had here, the sad truth is that the world is still wrong. And wherever you are, it's probably wrong about you.
If a rich white boy had his fingers torn off, somebody would be in jail by now.
I know.
I don't know anything about that. You're gonna have to call us down.
Laura Alden for Detective Bridger. He's running behind. Can you sit down?
Here, myself, I'll take my seat.
No, that's all right.
Please.
No, I want to stand.
You don't know me, do you? I'm Stuart Swinton.
No.
I've been out to visit your father several times, but we never really met. I'm a very close friend of Will Randall. He's the husband.
I know who he is.
Oh, you've met?
No, I just know the name.
Ah. Now, this is such a terrible, terrible thing. I'm just in shock over it. Will Randall was more than a friend and a colleague. He was my mentor.
And you were his protege?
Yes, a better word. It's a true pleasure. What an interesting scent you have, Miss Alden. At once new and familiar, very familiar.
Thank you. Were you bitten?
What?
Were you bitten?
What an odd question. What a very odd question. What made you ask such a question?
I don't know. People, when people are bitten, oftentimes it's on the hand.
What are you here for?
They want some information about the publishing house, and I'm standing in for my father.
George Swinton! Come on in.
Would you have a drink with me when we're done here, Miss Alden? I'd really like to get to know you, and perhaps I could tell you a little bit about Will.
Thank you. That's very sweet. Of course, I'd love to.
Wonderful. Oh. Don't break our date now.
Oh, I won't.
Andras here. When I'm not co-hosting the World is Wrong podcast, I'm hosting and producing the Radio 8-Ball podcast, where we answer questions by picking songs at random, like picking musical tarot cards. We've hosted musical divinations for people like John C. Reilly, Patricia Arquette, Tig Notaro, and Fred Armisen, and hosted over 200 songwriters, providing the randomly chosen answers, from Inara George and Dan Byrne to Mose Allison and Alan Toussaint. That's Radio 8-Ball, all one word. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts and download our app from the iTunes App Store.
Show.